It's time for Coffee on the Coast Book Banter. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Coffee on the Coast. It's time for another episode of Book Banter, one of my favorite days, especially on a cold and frosty day like today, where we're only 6 degrees warmer than Antarctica. What better thing to do than grab a cup of coffee and talk about books? So, joining me is Therese Horstgetter from the award-winning Manitowoc Public Library. Hi, Therese.
Hi, how are you today?
It's so good to see you again.
It's good to be here again, eventually.
Therese and I are just laughing because we always have some sort of technical difficulties, but we always figure it out, which is awesome. Kudos to us. And Therese has a great lineup of some suggestions to keep you nice and warm and your brain engaged on these cold winter days. Let's just dig right in, Therese. I'm going to pull up these two books. Let's talk first about the Lilac Girls. I read a little bit about it. You'd previously even mentioned this one to me offline, and I'm super intrigued. It's Lilac Girls by Martha Hall Kelly. Tell us more.
Lilac Girls was a wonderful drama, is the best way to say it. It has a lot of emotion, family-wise, individually. It takes place in the Ravensbrück concentration camp. And it has to do with three women, one that is a prisoner in the camp, one that is a doctor in the camp, so working for the Germans that are running the camp. And then there is a real life person named Caroline Faraday. And she was someone who was based in New York, but she was working for the French consulate and she was trying to get women out of the concentration camp. And so you get the perspective from each one and what they're involved in. The girl who is at the camp, I didn't go back and really reread the book, but it also happened to do with other female members of her family. And without really saying it, I don't want to mention why it's called the Lilac Girls. It is something that you hear about closer to the end of the book. And but it is just, without having to say more about all of those situations, it is really a great book. And besides this, she went back and wrote 2 prequels to it involving this Caroline Faraday and someone else in her family that all tried to work with this. Lost Roses is a prequel, and Sunflower Sisters is even earlier than that, an ancestor that was a nurse in the war. And so just having that real life person in there and knowing, even though you can say she was real, she wasn't in the physically hardest parts of it.
So Caroline you get a different perspective. Is a real historic figure.
Yes, she is. Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting. Okay, and the book is set in World War II.
And it's a novel, though. It is not, a memoir or a biography about her at all. It truly is a novel, and just really reaches into these people's lives. You get very involved with them.
It's interesting because it is, it's always a heavy topic when you're talking about the scenario that you just described. But as you described it, you also have a smile on your face. So that makes me feel like it's edifying, or,
There is just something about with her trying to help the girls. And even though you hear and can picture really horrific scenes, it still has just this feeling of people trying. And like I said, with the kind of the ending of the book, that you hear, the actual title reason. And
so accurate to, is it accurate to call it historical fiction?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so you're learning a little bit, but it is a novel, even though there is a real life historical figure in the book.
So it is. You always have to say something like this is a hard read to some extent, but a really worthwhile read, and you really feel very close to these people.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've read a couple in this genre recently, and at first I'm always a little hesitant, like, okay, am I prepared for how dark and how deep this
Yeah,
is going to be? But it is so important to read the stories and to, you know, kind of try to understand that headspace. And I've never regretted reading one of the
right,
books. It's
right,
true.
right.
Wow.
A
Okay.
very worthwhile read.
So that is the Lilac Girls by Martha Hall Kelly. Even the book cover is beautiful. I love the little detailing
It
on the
is.
right-hand side. Nice.
It is.
Okay, so that's Lilac Girls. We've got flowers in the title there. What is Strange Flowers by Donal Ryan?
Strange Flowers. I really had no idea what it was going to be. I just saw the cover originally, and it is actually, I almost thought it might be a bit of a horror kind of thing, but it absolutely was not.
Oh,
It is a book set in the 1970s in Ireland. So one thing about this book is you get a pretty heavy Irish brogue reading a lot of it. And there are some words I just kind of glossed over and figured, I think I know what they mean. And then a couple of others, some of the other characters in the books actually say, "What is that?" So you find out that way. So it's kind of fun that way. But it surrounds Patty and Kit. Patty is the husband, and they have a 20-year-old daughter named Mal. And she one day leaves. She just disappears without a note, without a goodbye. And they just go through these years with people praying for them that she's either going to come back or they will find out what happened to her. And 5 years later, she just walks in and she's back.
oh,
And she doesn't give much explanation. And then, as the story says, without giving much away, but what has she brought back with her? And so, um, without going into detail, it would be fair to say that the family grows, and leave it to you to find out how. But um, it is just it's not something with a great big bang of a story. It's just a beautiful story, and her parents live in a cottage that they just get to live in because her husband works for wealthy people who live nearby and takes care of the grounds, basically. So, um, if so, they have to kind of watch their step always with these people, that they are not just tossed out for some reason and not have a home to live in any longer. And so it follows through the generations in the family somewhat, and it it goes into something different along the way with another family member, but then it all still comes back together. So you have some mysteries solved, um, and there's a lot of, I guess, inward looking by the characters and how they have lived and how could they have lived, and what happens in other areas if you take off and come back to your family. And it's a rather beautiful book to read. I've never read anything by this author previously. He has a couple of other books, both set in Ireland, and it was just it was just a nice little read. It's not overly long. It's one of the shorter ones that I've read lately, but just a nice one. And
what era is it set in?
Strange Flowers is mentioned once, that you will understand where that comes from along in the book.
Therese, what era is it set in?
This is set in the 70s.
In the 70s.
So
Okay.
1973 is, I think, about when the daughter disappears.
And I'm glad you clarified that it's not a horror novel in any way,
No.
because just like you, when I saw this, it has strange in the title, and then it's
Yeah,
this black and white kind of forlorn image. I immediately
right.
thought, oh boy, this is going to be
That
like a murder mystery or some
that's what
kind
I
of
was thinking
suspense.
at first. Yeah. But and how that is when you think about the fields just kind of being the cover is very suitable to the book once you start reading, because there's a bit of that loneliness when you are set out in the country, and they do remind you a lot that there are these other people who basically own their home yet. It's not that the people step in a
Oh,
lot and are, you know, not kind to these people, but there's just that in the back of their mind all the time, that,
that's
yeah. So it's a
it's
good read.
fascinating. And I
Yes.
love how you describe that, it's written with that flavor of Irish brogue.
Mhm.
And so it gives you kind of an opportunity via your book to really travel, to have this experience of
It
almost,
was. It was it was
visiting
rather
Ireland
fun.
and coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because 'cause I'm like, "I think I've got that one down without without trying to look it up." So, yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay,
Yeah.
let's talk next about Nine Lives by Peter Swanson. I do have this little excerpt that I found. It
Okay.
says, it's from the New York Times bestselling author of Eight Perfect Murders comes the heart-pounding story of nine strangers who receive a cryptic list with their names on it and then begin to die in highly unusual circumstances. What?
Yep. Well, if you remember Peter Swanson, he wrote one of my favorites in the past, say, 5, 6 years, The Kind Worth Killing. That was really a favorite by many people here. He had
Oh,
some others in
yeah.
between that weren't his, didn't quite meet that. But I'm hoping for good with this one. And when it said that these people receive this list with names on, and it says they don't know any of the other people, they have nothing in common, they nothing, and they just figure it's kind of a maybe a bad joke or something. And then after the first person dies and then the second person dies, then they're really taking it seriously and trying to figure out what's happening. So, yeah, that's what I had circled was just pretty much that blurb that you had there. And
So you
it
haven't
says,
read this one yet?
no, this is my preview. And this one says, first, a well-liked old man is found dead is drowned on a beach, and a father is shot in the back while running through his neighborhood. In a whole different one happens in Maine, one happens in Massachusetts, and this is a blurb, that they're letting you know ahead of time, so not to ruin anything with it. But I'm really looking forward to it. I hope it will be as sorry about that as good as the one that is my favorite. I don't know if he'll ever top it, but I'm hoping for real good with this one.
So is this one a new release?
This is. In fact, I'm trying to see if this one had a date on it. I know if we have it, I know I put a hold on it. So it's either still on order or it has started circulating in between these few days here while I was
Okay.
working on this. So,
So essentially brand new. You're right,
yes, it
because
is.
his previous book, The Kind Worth Killing, was a
Mhm.
really good book.
That was really good. It had things that I think I had my mouth hanging open when they happened, like I didn't see that coming, and yeah, so if someone has not read that one, that's go back there and read that one for sure. That is
Yeah,
really a good one.
and it was fun, and it was lighter than the title might have allowed you to expect, right? Like, The Kind
Right.
Worth Killing almost
Yep.
sounds like, "Oh, it's gonna be like a murder spree or something." It's not
Uh-huh.
that at all. It was
No, no, it was had a lot of story to it and it was very good. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm super excited to add this one to my list then too. Okay, so then moving on, let's talk about Small Pleasures by Claire Chambers. And I noticed this. So it's long listed for the Women's Prize for Fiction, saying that it's an astonishing and keenly observed novel about the conflict between propriety and unexpected passion. It's a tender and heartrending tale that will draw you in from the first page and keep you gripped until the very end. Exquisitely compelling. and an irresistible novel, wry, perceptive, and quietly devastating. Ah,
It was. Um, the the little blurb I had seen somewhere about it um, brought in the subject that it has to do with a woman claiming that the daughter she gave birth to, that it was a virgin birth, that she was never with a man and became pregnant. She was just pregnant and gave birth and has this beautiful daughter that looks just like her. And she has a husband now, but she was not married to him when she got pregnant. And she um, had lived at home. She had no other relationships that would have caused this, as far as she or anyone else knows. And her husband believes her also. So he married, and he, took in this little girl as his own. And he is really just siding with her. And what happens is, the start of this is that a scientist has um, something out in a local newspaper, and this takes place in the 50s, and it's saying that it is not necessary to have both a male and female to reproduce, that they feel at some point that will be almost like for any species. But she writes a letter to the editor. This Gretchen writes a letter to the editor saying, I believe I had a virgin birth, that there was not a man involved in creating my daughter. And so this, a reporter named Jean, who is, it's mostly men. They get the big stories. She gets the little, bake sale kind of stories. And they were kind of laughing about this, but she picked up the story, and she went and she met the woman, and then scientists get involved studying to see if they can figure anything out. The mother and daughter both go to have testing done, and um, she had been in the hospital. The mother had been in the hospital with severe rheumatoid arthritis when she was younger, that they actually helped as she grew. And it was a place just for girls, and they were all in one little room. And in fact, one of the girls was in an iron lung. And so it gives you some details of her life that she spent there for, that I'm not positive on the amount of time, but she spent a good chunk of time there. And anyway, so this reporter really starts looking into it, looks into the hospital, looks into, is trying to help with the scientists that are coming into play. And the husband, who is he is a very gentle man. He owns a jewelry store, and he said, I just don't want to find out that there is a man who could come in and take her away, and that I wouldn't be
oh,
her father anymore, which was one of the very touching things about it to me, to just mention that was, his feeling in the matter. And the story makes its way, more details come out, and different friendships. Jean becomes very kind of close with the family from just spending time and taking them to different places. It seems that the daughter doesn't go out a lot on her own. She's, I think, about 12 during this story. And but she just kind of becomes another mom for her that likes to do a little bit more, where her mom tends to stay home more, and her dad is working most days. And so anyway, but they end up, the family and Jean end up to be kind of a unit working together about this. And it's, yeah, it was a nice book. It does come to a definite end to let you know. And it's it's just a different and good read.
Oh, nice. And again, you've got a great big smile when you talk about it.
Yeah.
So that is Small Pleasures, a novel by
Yes.
Claire Chambers. How interesting. What an interesting and unique plot twist. That
It
doesn't seem to
was.
follow
Yes.
the typical plots that a lot of books do. So that's very cool. Thanks for introducing us to that. Well, then let's talk about another heavy hitter, Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens.
This book was loved by a lot of people. It's just a very good storyline about a girl that is abandoned in North Carolina, and she lives with siblings and her parents. And one day her mother just grabs a suitcase and takes off. They live in kind of a swampy area of Louisiana and don't have a lot. One by one, her older siblings leave, and she's left with her father, who is um, a rather tough alcoholic. And but the fact that by the time he is left alone with her, he also helps teach her things like how to fish, how to do certain things. She's not going to school at her age of about 6, but she's learning other things, how to survive on her own. And she becomes known as the Marsh Girl. And Where the Crawdads Sing is a part of the book that you get into when it comes to the people travel the area kind of in boats just to make their way around this marshy area. And so people in the nearest town don't really know her, of course, and she makes friends with a couple who have a store that she can trade things with, and to have something. Um, and then she meets. Well, she has one young man that she has a friendship with, and somewhat of a romance, but he leaves to go to school and doesn't come back. And then there are the guys from the town, like the football hero and another guy who come to meet her. And so the talk about her is never good. People just don't know her and they talk badly. And anyway, the football hero ends up getting murdered. And so she is one of the prime suspect. And so the majority of the book kind of takes place from about that and following. And quite a bit happens to her in her life. And without saying a lot, just how she knows how to work with things in nature and has a natural curiosity and ability with things, and but then with the people side of things too. So, and it's good. And the reason I brought it up is the movie is coming out based on this book also. So I thought
Oh,
good time for people maybe to visit it if they've heard the title, haven't read it, and you might want to get that in before. Yeah,
yeah. So we're talking about Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. It really was a moving read. I did
it
read this one and
was.
I enjoyed it. I was moved. Sometimes when I read the back of the book, I almost gave it a pass, but somebody
Hmm.
said, no, 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 really, just give it a try.
Yeah.
And I did, and I do not regret it. It was good.
Yeah, it was one of those books to me that I heard the title for quite a while before I decided to read it. And where, oh, yeah, nothing's going to live up to, people are just saying so much about it. But yep, it's really worthwhile. It is a really worthwhile read.
Yeah. Oh, I can see how it would make a good movie too.
Yeah, I hope they do a good job with it. When you do love one and you can so picture these characters in your head and the whole, yeah, just just the all around book. I hope they do a good job with it.
Yeah, it's also fascinating to learn more again about that sort of corner of the world. Like you were describing the different marshes and how they have to navigate. It's not
Yep.
straightforward like going one direction down the Manitowoc
Right.
River, right? It's
Right.
got all these little branch offs, and you really have to know the lay of the land
Mhm.
and know how to operate the boats. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, definitely a good one.
Very cool. So we've talked today about Lilac Girls by Martha Hall Kelly, Strange Flowers by Donal Ryan, 9 Lives by Peter Swanson, a brand new one, Small Pleasures by Claire Chambers, and Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. We have been talking with Manitoba Public Librarian Therese Horsegetter. Thanks so much for coming on the show for Book Banter. You've warmed up my day. I'm looking forward to digging into some of these great reads, and I hope that you'll find enjoyment in them too.
Always happy to chat books.
We'll see you next time on Coffee on the Coast. Take care, everyone.
Bye.